Welcome to Trail Nutz, the podcast that digs into real stories from real riders about real trails. I'm Marc, your host, and today we're going to dive into another incredible journey around mountain biking. I am pleased to be joined with Glenn from Pulse Racing. I encountered some of Glenn's events over at Hardwood Ski and Bike the past summer. My son and I, took part in some 8-hour events, and when I went onto their website and discovered this whole world that they manage year after year, I was really intrigued, and I want to know what that was all about. I saw a lot of plugs into development programs. How do we get younger kids involved? And I thought it'd be great to have Glenn on to talk about that. So Glenn, thanks so much for joining us today. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Glenn, I was just wondering, maybe just to start us off, tell us a little bit of the history of Pulse Racing. What is it that it's all about, and what's your role there?
Well, it's a bit of a long story. As I told you, I can be long-winded at times. I actually started organizing events back in like 1985, 1984. I was based out of London and racing there, and there wasn't that many races around. So this was early days of mountain biking, obviously. So we started putting on some races at Circle R Ranch and then at Bowler Mountain. Did that for a while. And then I think it was in 94, Kim and Dave Viney that owned Hardwood were getting into mountain bike. Well, that was 94, 93, and they wanted to put on some higher level races. So I kind of worked with them, putting on an Ontario Cup race at Hardwood. And, we were sitting around having a beer after, and they're like, hey, we want to do more with mountain biking. And you seem to, kind of be plugged in what's going on with mountain biking. How about come up here and, work for us and put on races? And I saw all the amazing advantages of doing that with a dedicated center and their vision of what they wanted to create. So I came up to Hardwood in 1995 and then worked there for a number of years, sort of working up to general manager, but also running the events. And then in 2008, Hardwood changed ownership. So I sort of peeled off and then did my own thing. And that's when I started Pulse Racing as another company, event company then. But still working hand in hand with Hardwood for the majority of the events. And for all the same reasons that I wanted to be there in the first place. So, that's sort of Pulse Racing. And, in a lot of ways, Pulse Racing was sort of what I had done with events over the years. And then it works, again, in partnership with Hardwood as far as the staffing and running events and everything else. So it's kind of a one-man show during the off season, and then in season, it's bring everybody in for the events.
What was it that pulled you into cycling way back in the mid 80s? Like you said, what was it that got you into mountain biking? What was the allure and the draw?
Well, it's funny. I did a lot of road riding as a kid, and I also was a cross-country skier, so I ski raced a lot, and we do a lot of cycling for ski race training. Never found I was a great road rider. Like, I'm a pretty big guy, so like I'm 6 foot and 200 pounds. So road riding and climbing wasn't my thing. And then I think it was 83 or 84, a buddy showed up. He had been out west for the summer, and he came back with this thing called a mountain bike, which was like, wow, that's super cool. Let me check this thing out. Yeah, you go ride trails, and just like when you were a kid. And so I borrowed it, and then I said, nah, I'm not giving it back. What do you want for it? So he sold it to me because he was going back out to Whistler, and I rode around, and I knew some guys through windsurfing at a local store, and he said, oh, you're riding one of those things called a mountain bike. I saw that at the trade show. What is that? So he started bringing in some mountain bikes, which was really cool. I kind of went from there. And then it's like, well, you're riding. And in the early days, like in the 80s and 90s, if you wanted to ride somewhere cool and have a trail that you could ride on, you mostly went to races because that was a trail. Like, there wasn't all this other trail building that's going on, like Simcoe and Durham and everywhere else. So, the races were just super chill, super fun. It was a way to meet other people because, like, you're riding around, there's no one else mountain biking, right? So that sort of got me into the racing. And then the racing was mostly fun, but it was, it was competitive. But you got to ride some new stuff, see some new ideas, that sort of thing. So it actually went down to California in 1990 and did the Rock Hopper series down there in the spring. And, came back with some like, wow, like this was California mountain biking in the early 90s. Like it was late 80, it was 89. And like it was going on, right? It was Greg Herbold and John Tomac and Julie Furtado and all those names. And it was super cool to see, right? So then kind of come back and go, well, why can't we do that here?
Absolutely. What in those early days in Canada and maybe just even specific to Ontario, how big was that community back in the beginning, the early days?
It was small, but it was awesome. There was actually something called the Ontario Mountain Bike Commission that Natalie Saul and Mike Baddock from Milton area, they sort of started it, and we'd have meetings in their kitchen with their rabbits, and they were a huge, huge part of getting all that going and kind of organizing and coming up with the idea of, well, what are rules and how should races run and that sort of thing. And I can't exactly remember the exact date when it happened, but eventually UCI said, "Hey, we want to bring mountain biking into the fold." Norba had already formed and everything, so then Ontario Cycling said, "I guess we need to bring mountain biking into the fold." So basically, this mountain bike commission that was kind of unofficial got pulled in officially to Ontario Cycling. Yeah.
Nice. I imagine across the country you probably saw that. I know, I was a little bit later. I was mid '90s, late '90s when I started getting involved. And our events in New Brunswick, where I grew up, were very small. Like if we had 50 riders, that would have been a big event, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. When we were, I'll jump in. Yeah, like in the mid 80s, you show up at an event, there'd be like 30, 40 people, and someone would scratch the line in the dirt with their heel, and the courses were sort of marked. And yeah, and it's funny, I know you had Adam Ruppel on. Adam Ruppel was like a 12-year-old boy at that time when he'd show up at races, and he'd beat everybody. Yeah, so they started out very small, but they grew really quickly, like the boom of mountain biking in the 90s. And all of a sudden, at an Ontario Cup, you're getting 800 people showing up for races. And that was most of the racing was kind of this cross-country style racing. But they were longer courses, like it was a 10 or 12K loop. You did 2 or 3 laps. It's not like the little sort of what I call hamster races with the 4 and 5K loops now that are so small. So they were more adventurous, and there was no such thing as pre-riding back then. Like you showed up in the morning, someone said go, and you started riding, and like it was all like,
Yeah.
oh, wonder what's around this corner.
You never know. Yeah, just hang on. Um, as far as what you're up to with Pulse Racing, what's the importance of having a venue partnership like Hardwood Hill Ski and Bike?
It is critical. It's like it was when I came there in '95, you sort of see it and you go, wow, like this is amazing. And the reason is that you put on races in other places and you don't have full access if someone's walking their dog, or you put up course marking and the course marking comes down, or someone doesn't like what you did and they move a log across the trail, and you don't have that full control. And it's a big safety issue for riders. Like it's a big, stress for us. It's being a dedicated center. It has all the facilities. It has indoor washrooms. It has cafeteria. It has bike wash. Like you don't have to bring everything in every weekend, and you can set the course in advance, and people can pre-ride and check it out, and you get really good. Like it's good for the riders to have pre-riding because they can see the course and it's safer. So when they race it, they know what's coming up, and it's good for us because we can see what works, what doesn't work, get feedback from riders on pre-ride. We can tweak things if we need to from that. And the game with Hardwood, like they're all mountain bike people. Like they love mountain biking and cross country skiing, obviously, but they love mountain biking, and they're into it. And it just brings this energy and this teamwork that you don't get when you sort of bring a crew into different places and you're always dealing with different people. And I think the quality goes up because you have consistency in the product, in the trails, and the facility, and the consistency in the people as well.
I'm just thinking, I did both the summer and the fall, and I don't think there was a whole lot of duplication. What's the total kilometers of trail there at Hardwood?
Yeah, well, that's our goal. Like people always like, oh, I'm going back to Hardwood again. And it's like, yeah, but it's completely different. Like we run, the women's 4-hour, we run the single track classic, we run a Canada Cup, we run the summer 8-hour, the fall 8-hour, all in one venue. And you think, oh man, like, keep coming back to the same place. But they've got over 60K a trail that's open sort of every day, and we have a bunch of secret trails and that we use like for special events only, or we'll build a connector trail for an event. Also for events, because it's a closed venue, like there's no one else riding, no one walking their dog, we can run stuff backwards as well. So we'll run sections backwards so they feel completely different. So yeah, with that amount of trail, like we can run 5-6 events and have no duplication as far as the kind of terrain. And then different parts of the property have very different types of terrain. So you can say, okay, I want it to be this kind of race, or I want it to be this kind of race. and you can tweak it for that.
Yeah. I imagine having that amount of trail. I know you do run through the summer the weekly Wednesday, I think it's Wednesday night events. What's the goal with that weekly race?
Um, the goal is for people to have fun and to introduce kids and people to racing and just the community. Like it's so awesome. We get about 200 people every Wednesday night. I think like well over 100 of our kids under the age of 15. And the courses, like there's 6 different courses they can choose from, like from a 2K kids course, and it goes up from there. So there's something for everybody, and for a lot of people, it's their first time racing, or they're just racing Wednesday night to keep in shape and have fun, and just meet up with the same people every week. And then there's so many kids that get involved, and it's families. Like we have a lot of 3 generations. We got a grandpa who raced, 30 years ago when we started it, and his son was, on a push bike. He's graduated. He's got now kids. His kids are racing, and they're all out there, and they're just having a lot of fun and enjoying the racing, enjoying the atmosphere. And there's, they do $1 ice cream after the races. The kids race, and then they run over and get their $1 ice cream, and just that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have a young rider in my house as well. My 12-year-old was introduced to some form of racing. We did the 24-hour event, and then we did your 2 8-hour events that he's quite keen on. So we might try to make it over for one of the Wednesday night ones.
Oh, you should. You'd be blown away at like just the number of kids. Like everybody shows up. This person say, "Wow, look at all the kids." So it's different from a lot of races where it's like most like an 8-hour where it's mostly adults, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Switching gears somewhat, as I was perusing the site last night, I did see I think it was called a secret marathon event
yep.
or something. And tell me a little bit about that one.
That's a single track classic, so it's gone through some different iterations over the years. Basically, the concept is to sort of have a marathon event or half marathon event. So it's a 21K loop. So you do 1 or 2 times, and the one course that we don't pre-ride. So we keep it a secret, and we mark it just the night before. And it's a little bit different every year. It's kind of got a kind of a flavor to it, but like it's not a super technical course, but it's just a fun early season course. The idea is to have an early season event that people come out and yeah, we're doing adding a few new things to it every year. We're talking to some people about doing a poker ride, like a race in the morning, and then a poker ride in the afternoon, or bringing in a band and making it kind of a season kickoff festival idea with a race in there if you want to race. And then we added a category last year which is called a just ride category. So if you want to do the course, you want to a spouse with somebody else or a friend is like, I don't want to race. It's a bit hardcore. Well, you can, 10 minutes after the racers go, you go and just go ride the course. And because it's a long course, there's no lapping, so we don't have to worry about that. It's quite fun. It's just a super fun event.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. My 12-year-old asked me last night, well, how many laps do you want to sign up for? I was like, well, it's April. Like, my legs will be fresh. Like, maybe 1.
Yeah,
but he's got aspirations for more, so we'll see. But I'm sure we'll be out for that one. It sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's a good fun day.
With all the years of running these events, I'm wondering if there's a memorable moment for you. If there's something you're like, this is really rewarding. I'm glad I'm doing this. Is there anything that sticks out to you over the years?
Oh man, there's so many people you run into over the years, and there's so many amazing stories. Like I won't name names or anything, but there was one guy that was probably 80 pounds overweight and started racing Wednesday nights, and could barely finish an 8K course in the time allotment. Like there's a time cutoff, and like 3 or 4 years later, he's down, he's slim, he's fit. He's racing Radical, which is the hardest course to race in the time allotment. And, he just comes up and says, like, this changed my life. Like, just coming out every week for 18 weeks of the summer is just his motivation to keep fit and to change his life. And you got stories like that. You got, cancer survivor stories. There's just so many it's the people. Like, there's so many cool people you meet, and they're so real, and they're just out there having fun, and they're giving it, and they're getting the adrenaline rush, and then the families, you get these families, and it's their thing to do on a Wednesday night. Like they just, the one time a week they're all together and they're all racing together. You don't get that in soccer or basketball or hockey where grandpa, mom, and dad and the children are all participating in the same thing at the same time, and then they come back and trade stories and laugh, and it's that high you get off of that. It's the kids, it's the people, it's just seeing people. That's why I love what I do. You just, like, you're helping people have a good time. Like, what better job could you have?
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about some of the trail systems. I forget what it was called, but there was this one climb in the summer one. That was a grind.
Yeah.
Sears Ascent.
Sears Ascension. Yeah. That was a tough one. Yeah.
Tell me about some of the fun things you've seen pop up in the trails at Hardwood over the years.
Well, yeah, Hardwood, again, is kind of fun because it's a permanent venue. We can do a lot of things that, like, a lot of other places can't do. There's other places like Albion, or there was Buckwalla, or other places. But yeah, you get to, like, Hardwood's always done, they name sections. They'll name a climb or name a downhill. We name the routes. So part of it is really neat wayfinding. Like, if someone gets hurt, it's like, where'd they get hurt? Well, they got hurt on Waterfall. Okay, I know where that is. Or and a lot of the names that are given to the trails are people that have meant something at Hardwood, or meant something in either the cycling or skiing community. So Sears Ascension is from Tom Sears, and there's people's names beside things, usually with a bit of a alliteration that kind of makes sense and rolls off the tongue. Basically anybody who's been an Olympic athlete in either sport gets a trail named after them at some point. Or World Championships medal athletes. So we have DeSera's Drop, and we got Pendrillet, and we got Cider Slider, and we just name these names, not necessarily with their permission, but we just do it anyways. So yeah, there's a lot of trails that have some funny names if you actually realize what they say. I won't say some of those, but yeah, they're just fun names for things. Or we found something on the trail and you name it because of that, or whatever.
Yeah, of course. Is there I've got two stories I'll share. One from your summer event, and it was probably the worst moment of the event. Is you get to the top of that Sears Ascent, and for anyone that hasn't done it, like, it goes and you turn and it goes, and then you're still at the peak and it goes, and at the very top, when it's still going, there's a photographer.
Yeah.
I think she got me full, just kind of like gasping air, and it's just a chuckle, but it was a sad moment. Like, this is the moment you chose to snap a picture.
Yeah. But your quads are supposed to be fully contracted, so you look really, like, buff when you're up there, though.
Yeah.
Your tongue might be hanging out, but
oh, the tongue was definitely out. What is this? Is there I'm hoping there is the Winnie the Pooh trail.
Yes.
Is there a story behind that one?
Yeah, there is. So we call it 100 Acre Woods. So there was a piece of property that the general manager, their family owns, and added on to Hardwood. So that added on to Venture. And it's a beautiful piece of property. And there was a fire pit there when we were, checking out where we're going to put trail. And I said to myself, hey, it's a nice place for a picnic. If anybody's a Winnie the Pooh fan, they know that that's part of Winnie the Pooh, is a nice place for a picnic. And I'm going through there, and it's like, well, what should we call this piece of property? So I'm a Winnie the Pooh fan. I love Winnie the Pooh. I love the Tao of everything. Yeah, so we just came up with I sort of came up with the idea. Like, I think it was a number of people, like, let's call it 100 Acre Woods. So, and then we've got some Winnie the Pooh dolls and Piglet and Tigger and that sort of thing. So they got to build them a little house and put them in their little house, and they're on the trail. So it's just, again, it's meant to be fun. And actually what's turned out is that a lot of kids want to go ride it because they want to go ride Piglet Trail. They want to ride a Tigger Trail. They want to see Pooh. And we move them around a little bit as well. So sometimes they're like, oh, where do we need the Pooh go? And it's like, oh, you got to go ride it and you got to go find them, So, and that's the motivation for some kids. So that is just fun stuff. Yeah.
What I like about it, it's probably just a side effect, not planned at all, is as you're going through these races and your mind's just battling, as we all know racing is, it breaks it up. You're like, what is going on here? There's like a little tree and the piglet in the tree. and it's just a distraction from what your body is physically grinding against.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I'm wondering, because you do run these development programs, do you have any advice for anyone that might be listening? They have a young kid at home, or maybe them themselves are interested. Like, how do they get started? How do they get interested? What's the entry path?
Yeah, not to pump hardwood programs per se, but they have sort of full gamut that, hardwood's looked at it and said, okay, and they know from cross country skiing and other sports, like what's the development path. So there's Camp Hardwood. You got kids starting at like 5 years old, and it's a dedicated mountain bike camp. The 5-year-olds don't do mountain biking all day. Obviously, they do arts and crafts and other fun things, but there's a mountain biking component there if they want it. They have a Radical Riders program, which is like based off of the Jackrabbit program for skiing. So it's like get them into it, introduce skills. And it's kids with kids. So like a lot of times kids with their parents are like, oh, my parents are like lame and boring and I don't want to follow them around. So, then they see other peer kids doing it and go, okay, yeah, this is cool. And then, there's the Hardwood Next Wave program if kids want to get into racing and that kind of thing. So it's a fully integrated program from basically 4 or 5 years up. We got kids racing the Wednesday nights starting at 5 years old, and they do the kids, and again they see other kids. I think it's kind of cool. The one biggest thing so there's in lots of different communities have different programs like that. So it's not just on just at Hardwood, but a lot of different places. So get them into a program where they'll see peers and have fun with peers is a good thing, and they make friends. Like my kids did them, and they're friends for life, with the kids that they started out at 5 and 6 years old with. And the other big thing is that I learned and through some athlete development stuff is like kids love short spurts, like little kids, they don't do distance, they don't do endurance. So, I remember talking to some people, and it's like, so if you take your kid out for a ride, don't expect them to do a half-hour ride and just ride for half an hour. Expect them to do like 2 minutes, take a break, 3 minutes, take a break, 2 minutes, take a break. And as adults, it drives us nuts because we just want to ride. But and get the kids off the bike and give them a gummy and that kind of thing, because that's their metabolism. That's how their energy systems work. They don't do endurance.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of kids will get frustrated riding with adults when they are expected to do a 15, 20, 30-minute sustained ride, because it's just not them, like just not how they work. So that was one of the biggest pieces of advice I got when my kids were really, really young. And boy, it was really, really hard to do that. But it's just different. But then all of a sudden they start loving it because it's play. It's not like work, it's got to keep it play.
That's great advice. Really looking forward to the off season. Just before you and I jumped on here, we were chatting about switching gears from kind of the summer. We have our cross country, then you have in the fall, you have a little bit of cyclocross, and you and I were talking about fat bikes. Maybe just briefly touch on what's available over in your neck of the woods as far as fat bikes.
Yeah, we're super lucky. As I was mentioning, Hardwood's now got about 20K of fat bike trail that they groom, and they groom it with a snowmobile and a bit of a wider groomer than the snow dogs. Just because a lot of people riding there are a little bit newer to it, so they can't like ride a skinny the whole time. And it's packed a little bit harder because of that as well, which is really good. So they groom over for that. And then in the Simcoe County Mountain Bike Club, like we're so lucky up here, they groom, I think it's got to be at least 50K of fat bike trail with snow dogs. And I'm in Severn, so there's the Severn trails, there's Midland trails, there's Oro trails that are all groomed with like volunteer groomers grooming with the snow dogs. So the fat biking has gone crazy here. Like it's amazing. And with the Simcoe County Mountain Bike Club, we had a Moonlight Fatty Festival at Hardwood in February. And they had 250 people show up, and like people came from Toronto, from Durham, from all over. So that was cool. I think they booked it for February 15th this year. So they're going to be doing that again. So it was a night ride. And then again, there was like afterwards they had some food and beer and music and just again, community stuff, not a race, not an event per se, but a lot of fun.
That sounds great. We're always looking for ways to extend the season, right? I shared a story previously on one of my episodes. I was out last year. I don't know if it was like January 2nd. There was a little bit of snow on the ground. I took my regular cross country bike out, And I watched these guys on fat bikes just whiz by me. I was like, next year I'm gonna
Yeah.
have one of those. And so I do. It's back behind me here. Nice, absolutely. I think I've always heard that cross country skiing is a great crossover for cycling.
Yeah.
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 Glenn, I have just a couple last questions for you in our chat here today. My first question is, thinking of all the time that you've been cycling, do you have a trail that really sticks out that's memorable that was your favorite?
I think locally, like I'll say at Hardwood, because I'm just there so much, I ride there so much. Coffee Run is probably like one of the favorite trails. It was interesting when I first came to Hardwood in '95. We used to ride up Coffee Run, and after work, all the trails there are one-way direction. So when Hardwood's open, it's one-way direction. But after work or early morning, we'd come in and we'd ride down Coffee Run because it was like so much fun. So then we said, geez, we really should change the direction of this trail. So that's when we built Sidewinder as a loop to make that we could incorporate Coffee Run. And it's been built and changed and reworked for Pan Am. We came in and rebuilt it and bermed it and made some jumps and stuff. And so it's probably one of the more like memorable trails there. They think, and a lot of trails, a lot of events, Canada Cups and some of the 8-hour events were like, okay, we got to run it down Coffee Run. And people love that because you finish with a big smile on your face. And it's a 1.2 kilometer downhill that you feel no matter how hard Sears Ascension was, you feel awesome coming down that at the finish. So you don't remember the big climb. You remember the fun downhill. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the follow-up to that question is, do you have a favorite bike that's memorable to you?
the next bike. Favorite bike. Not really. I don't get emotionally attached to my bikes because what I realize is the bikes are getting better every year. So I'm fortunate that through help of Trek and some sponsorship, I can usually.
I haven't
Yeah,
out
it's
yet,
good.
but
Well,
looking
I got to
forward to
also
it.
put in a plug for cross country skiing though. So if you want to really improve your
Please.
fitness over the winter and not ride a trainer inside yeah, cross country skiing is it's awesome. It's a great way to enjoy the winter, and you'd be amazed at how the fitness crosses over, both ways from biking into skiing. But from skiing, you show up in early season, you're like, wow, I'm fitter than I usually am. So, really get a new bike. I love the Top Fuel. I've been riding a Top Fuel for years because I love full suspension, but I still want a cross country, whippy kind of feel and maneuverable bike. So I've been riding a Top Fuel like forever, and probably will ride one next year. And I just love those bikes. They're great. Yeah. Yeah.
The bikes are evolving, just on that point. I got a gravel bike in August, and it came with electronic shifting, and I was a skeptic, but I got to tell you, like if you're a skeptic out there, just try it, and your mind will be blown.
Yeah, yeah. I rode a electronic shifting first time this year too. It took me about 2 weeks to get kind of used to it, but after that, you're like, go back to regular shifting. It's like, oh, that's a lot of work and it's clunky. So yeah, you
Yeah,
get spoiled quickly.
yeah. So Glenn, thanks so much for hanging out today. I'm really looking forward to next season. I know you have a ton of great stuff. I already see dates coming out for the 8-hour events, for the Secret Marathon event in April, the Wednesday night stuff I see on the site. So people listening, go check out Pulse Racing's website. There's lots of good information. Great way to get into the sport. It's a great sport, great community. And again, Glenn, thanks for your time today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Talk to you later.